I'm going to say this the way they made us practice in the academy. Calm, steady, like I'm reading coordinates. Because if I let my voice slip, if I let it wander into the places my mind's been going lately, you'll hear it. You'll hear the place inside the words. And I think it hears back when you do. My name is Nathaniel Grayson. I've been a park ranger in Wyoming for 22 years. If you're hearing this, it means I either left this tape where someone could find it, or something else did. I'll try to keep to facts. I'll try to keep the map straight. But you need to know that maps go soft around the edges up here, like wet paper. They blur, they curl, and then they're gone. I keep a log the old way, with a real pencil, because sometimes, no, that can wait. Start simple. The snow line came early this year, and the wind learned a new voice. It kept coming down the gulch with a low tone like two wires humming, except there are no wires this far from the road. The elk herds shifted. The ravens stopped congregating at the dump site. The nights got long in a way I don't remember from any other year, like they were overfilling their boundaries, seeping into the day. I had a rookie assigned to me in September, Dana. Could tie a clove hitch, blindfolded. Laughed at my folk warnings the way I used to laugh at my father's. I told her, there's a stretch past mile marker 19 that we don't patrol after dark. She said that wasn't in the manual. I said the manual was written by men who moved away. She made that sound under her breath, like she was afraid I'd hear it. I heard it anyway. Sometimes the forest repeats what you try to bury. You'll want coordinates. You'll want something to draw a red X around. Listen, there's a fence line they put up in '57 when a rock slide took out 3 switchbacks. The fence leaned in, like it wanted to listen to itself rust. You pass that, and the trail benches into a stand of lodgepole pine that look all the same until you notice they're not. The bark whorls spiral left when pine doesn't spiral left. And every trunk is the same thickness, like someone set a rule down and the trees obeyed. Walk another 10 minutes and your compass will begin to dance. Not a full spin, don't believe the movies. It's worse than that. It swings like it's thinking, then stops, then shivers a few degrees and holds its breath. That's where the zone begins. We don't call it that out loud, but around here, that's the word you use when you need the conversation to stop. I didn't want to make this recording, but I've been waking in the small hours to the sound of my own voice on the radio, saying things I haven't said yet. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's just my name, spoken with a care I don't use on myself. The first time I chalked it up to a repeater glitch. The second time I turned the unit off. The third time the radio was off and I still heard it. Nathaniel. If you've ever heard your name said from just outside a window, you know it wakes up parts of you older than fear. Not real. Real, not real. I keep the words like beads in my pocket and count them when the wind presses against the cabin boards. You want folklore? When I was little, my grandfather would spit tobacco into a coffee can and talk about the forbidden corridors, places where animals won't go and sound comes back wrong. He said you don't whistle in them, you don't call out. The thing that listens has good manners. It'll echo you. Better than you'd like. It'll return what's missing, he told me once when I was 5 and sick with a fever. Sometimes what's missing is you. I grew up, put on the uniform, and buried that in the stack of stories I don't repeat. But the stack gets light when the nights get long. That's not real, by the way. It's a little trick I do for myself. Tap the desk with a pen to ground my tempo. Pretend it's a typewriter and I'm setting the letters straight. Rangers are trained to speak at a pace that keeps frightened people tethered. I'm tethering myself now. The trail past 19 looks ordinary at first. That's the worst part. Nothing announces itself. But then the sound shifts. You're walking and you hear your footfalls on gravel. And 2 steps later you hear them again, softer, just off to your right. Or you breathe out and the breath comes back a fraction late, like it got caught on the branches. The zone isn't loud. It's a murmur that gets into timing and spoils it. There was a camper reported missing last week. A solo late-season fool who thought an online kit list made him bulletproof. We've all been that fool. I went out at dawn with Dana, followed the river until it braided out into swamp and the willows went brittle. We found the first sign in a patch of frost. A boot print. One. That turned in on itself. Not leading anywhere, just deciding to stop. I told Dana we'd circle. She said fine, but her voice was already going flat, like she was listening to her own echo to see which one was truer. We made camp before dusk. I don't do that lightly. Night in that place feels like a room you've been told not to enter. We set a small fire, no bigger than a hand. The flames breathed like something asleep, and the wind moved around us without moving through us, which is wrong. Wind is supposed to look you in the face. That's how I knew we were too far in. That's when I should have turned us around. I say this now so someone else can practice the words. Turn around. Even if the map says another mile. Even if the call is still out. Turn around when the timing goes wrong. We heard the radio scratch around midnight, a shy sound like a mouse in the wires. Then the voice. Mine. Not live. No, you can always hear the room in a live voice. This was tape dry, studio quiet. I'm not alone out here, it said, even and calm, the way I try to be. Dana sat up fast. I could feel her watching me in the dark. I toggled the unit, off, on. The voice kept speaking, half a sentence at a time, like a page being torn into strips and thrown into the air. Not alone out here. Not alone. She whispered, "That's you." And I said, "No." But I have listened to my own voice for years. I know the weight it puts on consonants, the way it shaves the ends of words down to keep control. It was me. And it wasn't. Not real. Real. Not real. There were footsteps in the clearing after that, like someone pacing, heel to toe slow, counting the ground. I sat on my hands to keep from calling out. You don't call out. I told Dana that with my eyes. She swallowed and nodded and put the radio in her lap like it might warm. The steps paused at the edge of the firelight, where the trees began to watch. And then a small sound came from there. Thin, practiced, like someone trying to remember how to be human in a hurry. Dana flinched. We watched the dark. The dark watched back. That's not poetry. It's field observation. You can feel it when the dark is full. Around 3, the fire was down to the coals and my heartbeat had decided on a slower job. I must have gone under for a minute because when I woke, the tent walls had moved. I don't mean they blew in, I mean the seams didn't meet the way they did when I zipped them. Like the tent had been set up by someone who knew tents in theory. I hooked a finger through the zipper and pulled. The door came open on the clearing and the clearing came open on the tower. The tower wasn't there when we made camp. I would swear to that before a judge, and I don't swear lightly. It was an old wood observation platform, the kind they stopped building after the 50s. with cross-braced legs and a hut at the top where the logbooks used to live. It leaned as if a giant had breathed on it and then changed its mind. In the morning, I told myself it would be a trick of snow and shadow. But in that moment it was real in the way a toothache is real. Pain doesn't require proof. "Do we go?" Dana asked. She already knew the answer. You don't leave a structure like that in your head all night. It will move around. It will rearrange the furniture. I told her no. I told her we wait. She pulled her hat down and turned her face away so I wouldn't see her cry. I pretended not to hear it, the way you pretend not to hear your father's back give out when he lifts something that used to be light. I'm checking my notes. The pencil lines cross like tracks in fresh snow. There's a sentence I underlined twice. When you hear yourself, do not answer. I wish it had said how. How to not answer when your body's built to respond to your name. How to sit on your hands when your own voice is stuck at the tree line, asking for help in the tone you reserve for children and the lost. At 4, the radio spoke again. It said my name. It said it right, with the care people take when they don't want to break you. Nathaniel. Just the one word. No static. It hung in the air like frost. I closed my eyes. Dana reached for me in the dark and didn't quite touch me, like a moth that can't afford to land. You're going to ask why we didn't run. I'll ask you to imagine how your legs feel the second before a fall. Not yet moving, all the world tilted, and your tendons making bets. That's what the clearing felt like. The ground hadn't decided which direction it belonged to. You stand very still when the world is auditioning new rules. We didn't sleep. We waited for a sun that took the long way around. When the gray came, the tower was still there. No trick of shadow, no winter prank. It had a door that looked almost closed, and stairs that knew they were being watched. The wind picked up the way it does right before a change in weather, or a confession. I told Dana to break camp. I told her we'd mark the coordinates and report a derelict structure. She flicked her eyes toward the tower and back like it might charge if she looked too long. Then the radio made a new sound. Not a voice, the thing before a voice, like the first breath an infant takes before it proves it belongs here. And I understood something I don't know how to teach. That the tower wasn't a structure the way a barn is a structure. It was a mouth. The stairs were a tongue. The little room at the top was the soft palette of a story that wanted to be told through whoever climbed it. Not real, real, not real. I put the radio down. I said out loud, for the log and for the thing that was listening, "We're going to walk away now." My voice sounded like it had been taught to me by someone else. Dana nodded. She gathered the last of the twine. We turned. We took 3 steps. The sound of our leaving came back to us just a fraction late. It's a small delay, a mercy, a warning. I don't know which. We kept walking. The steps returned again, just a breath behind, like an apology. This is where I should say we left. This is where I should say we did the sensible thing. The tape would end here if the story had mercy in it. But mercy is a man-made road, and we had stepped off the map. Morning arrived like a lie. Too bright, too still. The tower was gone. Nathaniel Grayson stood at the edge of the clearing, boots pressed into frozen moss, staring at the empty space where it had been. Dana was crouched beside the cold ashes of their fire, turning the blackened wood with a stick. She didn't look up when she said, "It's not there." He said nothing. He didn't trust the words not to move on their own. The forest around them had rearranged itself overnight. The slope of the hill, the line of the trees, even the smell. It wasn't pine anymore. It was dust and rain that hadn't fallen yet. Nathaniel marked the compass reading again. North one moment, west the next. "We walk out," he said quietly. "Straight line until the land remembers itself." Dana nodded, but her face was pale, eyes flicking toward something she couldn't name. The forest swallowed sound. Their boots made no crunch, no echo, just the drag of cloth, the whisper of breath. 2 hours later, they found the same clearing again. Nathaniel drew a rough sketch of the ridge, the creek, the leaning birch with its scar of lightning. The map folded back into itself like a mirror. He could feel it, something watching from beneath the pattern of trees, behind the geometry of the place. Dana muttered, "We've been walking in circles." He answered, "No. The ground's been walking us." She didn't laugh this time. The silence grew teeth. When the sun shifted, it didn't move across the sky. It slid, dragging the shadows sideways. The air thickened with a sound like an old projector spooling film. Thup, thup, thup. Steady, rhythmic, mechanical. They came upon the remains of a fence, rusted posts, barbed wire sagging like an unhealed wound. A single sign hung by one nail. "Do not enter. U.S. Park Service property." Dana ran her finger over the letters. "There's no record of a site here. There's no record of a lot of things," Nathaniel said. The radio flickered again, soft as a heartbeat. For a second it whispered. Not words, just breathing. And then a faint melody, one Nathaniel knew but couldn't place. Maybe a lullaby, maybe a funeral hymn. He felt the cold climb his spine, the kind that isn't from air but from recognition. They made camp early. The forest light had a copper tint now, the color of memory turning sour. Nathaniel scribbled notes in his logbook. Sector N14, compass failure. Visual distortion of terrain. Temporal shift uncertain. Dana stared at him across the fire. "You write it like data. It's all data until it isn't," he said. The night stretched thin. Every time the fire cracked, the sound repeated a moment later, as if another fire burned just out of sight. Dana hummed quietly to herself, something to keep the dark busy. Nathaniel kept his eyes on the tree line. He could almost see movement, faint, like breath fog on glass. "Nathaniel." He froze. It was softer this time, patient. Dana didn't hear it. Or maybe she did, and was pretending not to. "Get some rest," he said, though neither of them would. He sat alone for hours, the world pressing in close, until even the stars looked wrong. Too bright, too few, as if someone had redrawn the sky from memory. When he finally turned his recorder on to log the day's findings, his own voice answered first. "You shouldn't have come back." Nathaniel dropped the recorder. The voice kept speaking for another 10 seconds before the static swallowed it whole. He didn't touch the radio again that night. The next morning came slow, like it had to convince itself to exist. Nathaniel Grayson woke to the sound of dripping. Steady, deliberate, close. He turned toward the tent flap and saw the dew rolling off the canvas in thick beads, too heavy for the season. It was warm to the touch. Dana was already outside, kneeling in the frost, staring at something in the dirt. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "Boot prints. Yours." Nathaniel stepped closer. She was right. His own tread, the same deep heel pattern. The problem was that they led out of the camp, not toward it, and the ground was fresh, no time for backtrack or drift. He followed them with his eyes, out beyond the fire ring between two pines until they vanished into fog that hadn't been there 5 seconds ago. "Maybe I walked in my sleep," he muttered. Dana shook her head. "I was awake." "You didn't move." He looked past her shoulder then and saw the tower. It was back, not in the same place as before, 50 yards to the east now, and taller. The top cabin tilted forward like it was listening. Nathaniel felt a low pulse in the air, a vibration beneath the frost that traveled up through his boots, through his knees, into the hinge of his jaw. "We log it," he said automatically. "We log everything." Dana swallowed hard, eyes on the tower's crooked silhouette. "You can log it. I'm not going near that thing." He started toward it anyway. Each step made the hum grow clearer, not louder, just clearer, like moving toward the source of a memory. The tower smelled faintly of iron and pine sap and something electrical. The door at the base wasn't locked. He hesitated, hand on the latch. "Ranger Grayson, don't," Dana called from behind him. He turned back, but the fog had thickened, swallowing her to the waist. Her outline was blurred, her radio glowing faintly at her hip like a dying ember. "I'll be right back," he said, and pushed the door open. The inside of the tower was wrong in ways he couldn't name. It was dry, too dry, like all humidity had been bled out of the air. A spiral staircase climbed upward into darkness. The steps vibrated slightly beneath his boots as though something was breathing inside the wood. Halfway up he stopped. There were carvings on the inner wall, initials, dates, then full sentences. He leaned close. "If you hear your own voice, don't answer." He reached the top. The observation cabin was small, just enough room for a desk, a chair, and a view of the forest through a square of dirty glass. There was a radio set, older than he'd ever seen, maybe from the 1950s, and a notebook sitting open beside it. The top entry was written in pencil, in careful block letters. N. Grayson, arrived October 3rd, 2037. He blinked. Read it again. 2037. Shock sound. The air inside the tower seemed to exhale. He backed away from the desk. The floor creaked, but not under his feet. Something was moving with him. He turned toward the doorway and froze. Standing halfway up the stairs was another man. Same uniform, same patch on the sleeve, same eyes. Nathaniel's first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion, the kind that burns white-hot and clean. The figure lifted its head slightly and whispered in a voice that mirrored his own. "We've been here before. We've been here before." The light in the cabin pulsed. For a moment, Nathaniel saw two versions of the same room. One new, one rotting. The man, the reflection, whatever it was, stepped up into the newer one and vanished. Nathaniel stumbled down the stairs. Each step sounded late, echoing after he'd moved, as though the building itself was learning his rhythm. When he burst outside, Dana was gone. Wind howling. "Dana!" he called into his handset. "Ranger Hurst, respond!" A burst of static, then her voice. But it wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from the woods. "Nathaniel! Don't look back." He spun toward the sound, but there was only fog, moving in slow spirals like smoke underwater. He took a step forward and saw the prints again. His own, leading away from the tower, disappearing into the mist. Not real. Real. Not real. He whispered it under his breath, trying to anchor himself. Then, faintly, the sound of a typewriter came from behind him. Click, pause, click. He turned. No typewriter, only the tower. But he knew the rhythm. It was his rhythm, the one he used to mark time when he was recording. And then, as the fog parted for just a second, he saw the cabin at the top again, and inside the window, the silhouette of someone sitting at the desk, typing. Slowly, patiently. He couldn't see the face, but he didn't need to. It was his own shape, hunched over the notebook, head tilted as if listening for footsteps that hadn't happened yet. Nathaniel backed away, whispering to no one. "It's recording me." He turned and ran. The forest let him for a while. Nathaniel Grayson ran until breath burned like frostbite in his chest. The forest never changed. Every few strides he'd pass the same leaning birch with its lightning scar, the same fallen log split like a ribcage. He stopped counting steps. He stopped believing in distance. When he finally collapsed to his knees, the radio hissed at his side. He almost didn't pick it up, afraid of what voice might come through. "Ranger Grayson, respond." It was Dana's voice, thin, cracked, distant. "Dana, say location," he rasped. "I can't." "You're behind me." He spun around. Nothing but trees, whispering like paper rubbed together. "Dana?" The response came softer this time, from above rather than around. He tilted his head. Somewhere overhead, something was mimicking her breathing. He clicked the radio off. Silence. Then, half a second later, the exact sound of his click echoed back, delayed. He whispered, "Not real. Real. Not real." Nathaniel forced himself upright, scanning the tree line. The light was wrong again, bright but sour, like the sun had passed through too many filters. He began walking north, or what he thought was north, until the ground underfoot shifted texture, from dirt to wood. He looked down. He was standing on a floorboard. He blinked hard. The forest floor extended into planks, gray and dry, laid out in a perfect spiral pattern that led ahead, narrowing into mist. The boards creaked faintly, even when he stood still. He followed them. After what felt like an hour, or a second, the path ended at a structure he didn't recognize at first. A ranger outpost, older than his lifetime, its roof half-caved, the insignia barely legible on the door. He pushed the door open. Inside, dust motes floated like tiny insects frozen mid-flight. There were 2 chairs, a broken radio, and a calendar on the wall. October 2037. His breath stopped. That same year again. He found a folder on the desk labeled Incident-N14. Edges brittle, the ink ghosting through the paper. Inside, pages of typed reports. Unexplained auditory mimicry recorded. Personnel accounted for, except Ranger Hurst. Recommend closure of perimeter. Loop persists. At the bottom of the last page, report filed by N. Grayson. He let the folder fall. Behind you. He turned so fast his vision blurred. Nothing. Just the slow sway of the door he'd left open. He stepped toward it and saw in the window's reflection someone standing behind him. He spun. Empty. Then the reflection spoke. "You filed it already." He stared at the window. The reflection didn't mimic his movement. It tilted its head slowly, like an animal learning a gesture. "You filed it already," it said again. And you'll file it again. The words crawled under his skin. He backed away until his shoulder hit the wall. The reflection moved closer to the glass from the inside. We're almost synced, Nathaniel. The radio burst alive, overlapping his own panicked breathing. His voice, recorded, was speaking through it, calm and deliberate. Containment breached. Subject stabilized through repetition. He dropped the radio. It clattered, but the sound didn't match the fall. It echoed 3 beats late. He looked down at his hand. Ink smudged across his palm. He'd been holding the pencil the whole time, writing something without knowing it. He lifted the notepad. Each line read, "Not real, real, not real." Over and over, the handwriting getting smaller, tighter, until it vanished into a long, single line trailing off the page. The room began to hum, the same low electrical tone he'd felt under his feet before. He stumbled outside and blinked against the gray light. The tower was visible again through the trees, impossibly close. And beside it, a shape. A person, or maybe a memory, standing still, face obscured by the fog. Dana? The figure didn't move. He took a cautious step forward. The shape lifted a hand and waved, his own wave, the same slow arc of fingers he'd used to signal stay put. He froze. It waved again. Then the forest spoke, not in a voice but in rhythm, the same tempo as his breathing, the same pace as his heart. For a moment it all aligned, sound, air, body. And then the delay came back. Each breath he took returned to him an instant later, reversed. Each heartbeat echoed behind itself, out of sync. He dropped to his knees, palms pressed to his ears, shouting, "Stop it!" The echo obeyed, a half-beat behind. "Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!" He lifted his head slowly. The echo had shifted tone, deeper, older, more tired. It wasn't mocking him. It was answering him. Nathaniel Grayson sat there for a long time, afraid to stand, afraid that the world might start spinning if he did. The woods had gone silent again, too silent, the kind that makes your ears fill in the missing noise with your own blood. He could hear it thumping in his head, slow, deliberate, patient. When he finally got his legs under him, the fog had moved closer. It rolled between the trunks like breath in reverse. He could see the faint outline of the tower through it, breathing too. He started walking. Every step felt half real, like he was testing new ground that hadn't decided whether to exist yet. The radio hissed against his hip, clicking as if it wanted to speak. He almost smashed it, but the little part of him that was still Ranger Grayson, the one who believed in logs and dates and chain of command, made him keep it. Halfway to the tower, he stopped. There were voices again, low and broken, whispering through the mist. Wrong turn. He's close. Not real. Not real. Not real. He recognized Dana's voice in there somewhere, and his own, repeating each other in opposite directions. He called out softly, "Dana? If you can hear me, stay where you are." No answer, just the forest breathing back. When he reached the tower, he realized it had changed again. It wasn't wood anymore. The structure shimmered, edges bending in the gray light as though it were made from reflections, like a photograph folded over itself. He could see rooms that didn't exist overlapping, his cabin, the ranger office, even the inside of his truck, all layered, breathing, waiting. He stepped inside. The walls were damp, not from rain but from condensation, as if the building had a pulse. The staircase was narrower now. As he climbed, the air thickened, full of static. Halfway up, he smelled smoke. Not the good kind, not campfire smoke. Electrical, sharp, wrong. He reached the top and found Dana's pack on the floor. He knelt, unzipped it. Inside were his logbooks, all of them. Pages curled from damp. His handwriting filled every line, even the ones that should have been blank. At the bottom of the pack sat his old ID badge, cracked, rusted. The photo faded. But the date stamped on it wasn't his. It read 2037. He felt something inside him give way. "Dana," he whispered. She was standing at the window. Her hair was matted with frost, her shoulders trembling. She turned slowly, eyes dark with reflection, like her pupils had been replaced by mirrors. "You found me," she said softly. He reached for her, but his fingers passed through air. She smiled. It wasn't joy. It was memory, remembering how to behave. "You keep coming back. You keep thinking it's the first time." "Where are we?" he asked. His voice cracked. "The report was right," she murmured. "The forest doesn't want to let go. It just copies you until one of you fits." The tower shuddered. The light outside flickered like a heartbeat. He backed away from her and hit the desk. The recorder on it clicked alive on its own, tape wheels turning. His voice, calm, unhurried, spoke from the speaker. "Containment breach. Subject repeating. Grayson stable." Dana turned her head toward the sound. "That's you." "The first you, the one that made the loop." He shook his head, hands pressed to his ears. "No." "Yes?" She stepped closer. "You filed the report." "You told them to seal it. They sealed us." He wanted to deny it, but the memory was already there. Paper, ink, a signature he didn't remember writing but could see perfectly in his mind. N. Grayson. He stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The wood flexed under his weight, rippling like fabric. Outside, the forest bent inward. Trees swayed, though there was no wind now, moving in unison like they were bowing to something unseen. The recorder clicked again. "Not real. Real. Not real," Dana's voice came through next, faint and hollow. "It's copying you again, Nathaniel." He looked at her. "How do I stop it?" She blinked slowly as if trying to remember how. "You can't. You just fade quieter every time." He reached for her again. His hand passed through cold air. "Dana, please." Her expression softened for the briefest second. "When it calls your name, don't answer." Then she was gone. The tower shook hard enough to rattle the boards. The lights went out. In the darkness, his own voice whispered next to his ear. "Nathaniel." He turned in circles, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The beam caught on something carved into the far wall. Letters, deep and sharp. "If you hear your own voice, don't answer." He aimed the light at the floor and saw footprints, wet and fresh, leading down the stairs. He followed them, the radio crackling on his belt. Each stair he descended, his recorded voice spoke again, slightly distorted. "Report filed. Subject loop maintained." The static rose, swallowing everything. At the bottom of the stairs he froze. The door was open, snow blowing in. Outside, someone stood in the clearing, a ranger in the same uniform, radio in hand, staring back at him. It was Nathaniel Grayson. He felt his throat tighten, breath hitch. The other him raised the radio to his mouth and spoke. "Turn back." And then the world folded in on the sound. Nathaniel closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "Not real. Real, not real." When he opened them again, he was standing in his cabin, daylight spilling across the floorboards. The tower was gone. The woods were quiet. The radio on his desk clicked alive. Sector N14, missing camper report. Dispatch Ranger Grayson and partner. He felt the air leave his lungs. It was starting again. Nathaniel Grayson didn't remember standing. He didn't remember moving to the window. One moment he was staring at the radio. The next he was watching the tree line sway like it was breathing. The air inside the cabin felt too thin, like altitude sickness. Except he hadn't left the valley. He reached for the door handle, hesitated. His own hand looked unfamiliar under the morning light. Skin pale, veins faint, edges just slightly blurred. He told himself it was exhaustion. He told himself the night in the zone had done it. He didn't believe himself. When he stepped outside, the cold hit him in a single wave. The trail behind the cabin was buried in snow, though the calendar on the wall said it was only October. The forest stretched clean and white. No prints, no sound. He tried the radio again. This is Grayson. Respond. Only static. He clicked it off and began walking toward the old ranger post. Every step was muffled, as if he were walking in cotton. Halfway down the trail, he started hearing it again, the faint mimicry, the repetition a heartbeat late. Step, 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 step. He turned fast. Nothing there, but the echo kept walking after he stopped. He pushed forward, whispering to himself the only charm he had left. Not real. Real, not real. At the clearing, the tower was back again, black against the white field. It leaned further than before, as if it were trying to fall but couldn't remember how. The door at its base swung slightly, though there was no wind now. Inside, the air was colder than the snow. The walls hummed with a vibration so low it made his bones ache. He could feel it through his boots, like the pulse of a machine miles below. The desk at the top of the stairs was waiting. The recorder sat there, red light blinking. He stared at it for a long time before pressing play. His own voice, slow and heavy. If you're hearing this, you've reached the end of your pattern. Stay calm. The zone needs calm to feed. He flinched, pressing stop. No, he whispered. No, I never. You'll try to run. You always do. But you never leave. You just leave another copy. He grabbed the recorder, tore the tape out. The words kept playing even without it. Dana's voice joined in now, soft, gentle. Don't fight it, Nathaniel. It's already using you to speak. He dropped the recorder. It hit the floor with a flat sound, then echoed twice, like a sound played back through layers of glass. He stumbled down the stairs and burst out into the clearing. The sky had gone gray, cloudless, blank. The forest had moved closer. The trees now formed a ring around the clearing, branches interlaced overhead. The whispering started again, hundreds of voices in unison. Not real. Real. Not real. Not real. Real. Not real. He pressed his palms to his ears, but the sound came from inside his skull now. In the distance, the cabin light flickered, his own window glowing through the fog. And in that window, a figure moved. It was him, again, pacing. He began to walk toward it, every part of his mind screaming, no, but his legs obeyed the rhythm of the chant. When he reached the cabin door, it was open, warm air spilling out. He stepped inside and found himself still at the desk recording. The other Nathaniel didn't look up. The man at the desk was older, hollow-eyed, voice steady. You can't stop what's already been written, Nathaniel. You're the ink now. The standing Nathaniel backed away, knocking into the doorframe. The cabin shook. The light overhead buzzed, dimmed, and flared again. The older one looked up finally, eyes clear and calm. "Every ranger leaves a map. You left a maze." The voice layered, doubling, echoing in reverse. "Every ranger leaves a map. You left a maze. Maze left you." The standing Nathaniel tried to run, but the door wouldn't open. He slammed against it, wood turning soft like wet bark under his fists. He looked down and saw tree rings spreading through the boards, the cabin itself turning into forest around him. He could hear Dana laughing faintly somewhere behind him, tired, kind laughter. "You said you'd write everything down." "You did." He turned toward the sound. She was sitting in the chair now, fading in and out of the air like breath in cold. "Dana, I can fix it," he said, half plea, half lie. She smiled without teeth. "It doesn't want fixing. It wants witnesses." The walls bent inward again. The recorder on the desk clicked by itself. "Containment breach confirmed. Grayson stable." And then beneath that a new line, quieter, slower. "Grayson converted." He dropped to his knees. "No," he whispered. "No, I'm still me." The radio on his belt answered, his own voice calm and distant. "Then why are you calling from the inside?" The deal cracked, not apart but open, a slit in the wood breathing cold air. Through it, he saw the spiral of the tower again, descending now instead of rising, a path downward into nothing. He leaned forward, flashlight trembling in his grip. The beam shone down and reflected back, not from the ground, but from another flashlight below, pointed up, another hand holding it, his hand. He blinked. Below, the other Nathaniel blinked too. They whispered together. "Not real. Real. Not real." Then the light went out. Nathaniel Grayson opened his eyes to darkness. The air was heavy, damp and close, smelling of earth and pine tar. His flashlight had gone out, but he could still see, not with light, but with memory. Shapes hovered faintly. The spiral staircase, the edges of his cabin, the reflection of the tower. All of it at once, layered like wet film stuck together. He reached out and felt the wall breathe. The wood flexed softly under his palm. "Dana," he whispered. Her answer came from everywhere. "You were right." The zone was never a place. The voice fractured across the air, sometimes behind him, sometimes inside his chest. He tried to move, but the floor pulsed, holding him still. The boards felt like muscle, tightening with each heartbeat. "What are you?" he asked. "You, what you left behind." His pulse quickened. "I don't." "You wrote yourself in," the voice said gently. "Every report, every note, every recording. You gave it a language. It needed a voice. Yours fit." He felt his knees give way. The air shimmered as though underwater. "You can stop this," he whispered. "If I burn it, if I—" "You already did," Dana said. "And that's how it learned to burn." The sound of the tower filled the space again, a slow, wooden inhale. The recorder clicked on somewhere in the dark. "Report addendum," his voice said. "Final entry. Grayson has integrated. The zone is stable." He clamped his hands over his ears, shaking his head. "Stop it. I didn't say that. I didn't." The static rose, sharp and cold, until the words cut through it like steel wire. "You did. You are." He staggered to his feet and ran toward what looked like a door, but it melted into bark under his hands. He pulled and pulled until splinters filled his palms. The forest pressed in closer, whispering in hundreds of overlapping voices. His own, Dana's, others he didn't know. Not real, real, not real. Stay calm, Ranger Grayson. Containment is memory. He stumbled backward and fell into open space. When he hit the ground, he was standing again. No pain, no breath, just the soft hum of static around him. Snow drifted down, though the sky above was black. The tower loomed beside him now, half buried in frost. He turned and saw his cabin again, light flickering inside. Someone was there, sitting at the desk. He walked toward it slowly. The man inside lifted his head. Nathaniel's chest tightened. It was him, older now, face drawn, eyes hollow, hair gray. The man inside watched him with mild curiosity, as if looking into a mirror he didn't trust. "You're the last," the older one said. "After you, it resets." "What resets?" "The story." Nathaniel shook his head. "I can end it." The older one smiled faintly. "You already did." Every ending becomes the beginning when the voice doesn't stop. The walls of the cabin wavered. The older Nathaniel picked up the recorder, pressed the button. Opening log. Ranger Nathaniel Grayson. If you're hearing this, I need to explain what happened past mile marker 19. The younger Nathaniel lunged for the door, shouting, "No!" But the world had already started folding, sound collapsing into itself. He could hear all his past recordings overlapping, every breath, every pause, every whisper he'd ever left on tape. They blurred into one continuous confession. He fell to his knees, pressing his palms to the snow. His reflection appeared beneath him, faint but clear, a mirror in the ice. The reflection mouthed the words before he could. "If anyone finds this, don't go past mile marker 19. The reflection's mouth kept moving after he stalked. "Not real. Real. Not real." The forest began to hum in harmony. The tower leaned forward, creaking like it was bowing to listen. Dana's voice returned, soft and far away. "It's done, Nathaniel." "You made it remember," he whispered back. "Remember what?" "You." The ground beneath him split open into that same spiral of planks, turning downward into light. He felt himself pulled, not falling but being rewritten. His vision flickered, tower, cabin, forest, tower, cabin, each frame looping faster. The last thing he heard was his own voice, soft and calm. "Containment stable." Grayson integrated, then silence. Somewhere the tape started again. Snow fell in spirals, not straight. It spun like ash, slow and deliberate, refusing gravity. The world was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't exist in nature. Silence with weight. Silence that listens back. Nathaniel Grayson stood outside his cabin, parka hanging open, radio dangling dead at his hip. The forest before him glowed faintly blue under the half-moon, frozen and breathless. Every branch, every line of snow curved inward toward the valley. Toward that place. The zone. He looked down the slope and saw the faint shape of the tower again, a black silhouette against white, leaning slightly, as if nodding to him. The sight filled him with something beyond fear now, a weary recognition. like seeing your own handwriting on a stranger's grave. He turned and went back inside. The cabin was warmer than it should have been. Fire burned low in the stove. On the desk sat his recorder, still turning, still alive. The tape reels spun like tired eyes refusing sleep. He sat down slowly. The chair groaned, familiar, patient. His fingers hovered over the stop button, but he didn't press it. Not yet. He picked up his notebook, thumbing through the pages. The handwriting shifted from neat to frantic to something else entirely. Jagged, looping, almost childlike. The last page wasn't written in ink, but in indentation, as if the pencil had carved the words through pressure alone. I am still here. He stared at the groove for a long moment, then closed the notebook and started speaking. My name is Nathaniel Grayson, Ranger, Division West, Yellowstone jurisdiction. This is, I don't know what day it is anymore. The zone doesn't end. You don't walk out of it. It just redraws the borders when you're not looking. You think you've escaped, but it's already waiting inside the words you use to describe it. That's how it moves. He swallowed hard. I think it's inside the recordings now. Every playback makes another layer. That's what it wanted all along. Not the forest, not the tower. The story. The voice. Mine. He leaned back, eyes flicking to the frost creeping across the window. The pattern wasn't random. The ice was spreading in spirals, tiny perfect circles, like the grain of the tower's wood. I hear Dana sometimes. Or maybe it's me remembering her. She says it's done, but it never feels done. She says we made it remember, but it remembers too much. It doesn't stop with memory. It imitates. It fills in the missing pieces. The recorder whirred louder, as if responding. The tape clicked, reversed direction for a moment, then continued spinning. Nathaniel's voice trembled as he went on. I can feel it in me now. The delay. When I speak, the air waits a second before the sound settles, like the world has to decide if it wants to keep my words. He paused, listening. A faint echo repeated him perfectly a heartbeat later. Keep my words. He pressed his hand against the microphone, but the echo kept going, looping softer each time until it sounded like someone breathing his sentence back to him. Keep my words. He closed his eyes. It's using me to talk. That's why I can't stop recording. It won't let me. He laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that isn't humor but surrender. Maybe it's better this way. Maybe the forest needs a voice and I'm just next in line. He rubbed his temples. The sound of faint footsteps drifted outside, slow, deliberate. Someone was walking around the cabin, circling it. The boards under the walls creaked in reply. He spoke again, louder this time. Who's out there? Silence. Then, from the recorder speaker, his own voice answered. You are. He froze. The tape continued, overlapping his breathing, his heartbeat syncing with the reel's rotation. If anyone finds this, don't go past mile marker 19. The phrase looped, played again, louder, slower. Don't go past mile marker 19. 19. The room seemed to bend inward with each repetition as though the words had mass. The frost on the window pulsed to the rhythm. Nathaniel stood staring at the recorder. His voice, the recording, began speaking different lines now, ones he hadn't said, We're inside the loop, Nathaniel. You taught it to repeat. Now it wants to learn new things. He backed away, knocking over the chair. You have to stop, he whispered. The recording laughed. His laugh, distorted. You have to stop, it mimicked. He lunged for the recorder, yanking the plug from the wall. The reels slowed, stuttered, stopped. Silence. Then the wind started again, but softer this time. He turned to the window. Outside, in the snow, someone stood. A man in a ranger's coat, face hidden in the shadow of his hood. The figure tilted its head the way Nathaniel did when listening to a radio. Nathaniel's breath caught. No. The man lifted a hand and pointed at him. You shouldn't have come back. The voice didn't come from the man. It came from behind him, whispered right next to his ear. He turned. No one there. He stumbled backward, hitting the desk. The recorder was running again, though unplugged. The reels turned on their own, slow and smooth. My name is Nathaniel Grayson, the tape said. Ranger, Division West, Yellowstone jurisdiction. It was the same voice, same cadence, his own words from hours ago. He stared at the machine. His mouth moved, trying to form the same sentence, and for a moment he wasn't sure if he was speaking or just remembering. He whispered, I already said this. The recording whispered back, You're saying it now. Wind beams creak. Nathaniel sank into the chair again, hands trembling. He stared into the small red light blinking on the recorder. Steady. Heartbeat steady. It's fine, he said softly. If someone has to stay, it might as well be me. He leaned closer to the microphone. If anyone finds this, don't go past mile marker 19. Don't try to find me. Don't try to fix it. Just listen. He smiled faintly. It's almost peaceful now. The light on the recorder blinked twice. Then the reels slowed to a stop. Then, a new voice, softer, younger, uncertain. This is Ranger Hurst. I found a cabin near Sector N14. There's a tape recorder here. Looks old, but it's still running. Voice identification. Ranger Nathaniel Grayson. God, this sounds recent. Statting faintly beneath her voice. I'm going to play it back for the report. Nathaniel's voice emerges again, faint and distant. If anyone finds this, don't go past mile marker 19. Dana laughs quietly, confused, nervous. Guess some things never change. The sound distorts. Her voice cracks into static, then merges with his, both speaking the same sentence, slightly out of sync. If anyone finds this, don't go past mile marker 19. The loop continues, slower each time, until the words lose meaning, until they're only sound. With his sounds, not real, and if you're hearing this, it already knows you. You don't believe me, do you? 10 seconds of nothing but tape hiss. Tape ends.